Project Metallurgent, by Proving Grounds Publishing, is a tactical mecha wargame / tabletop RPG with deep strategic gameplay heavily inspired by the Armored Core series. Welcome to an alternative reality, where the solar system was a little more alive instead of just full of lifeless rocks, and so when World War II is over, both of the world's superpowers put their sight into the stars instead, colonizing the Moon and Venus and beyond. This is also a setting where Soviet Union didn't stick their dick into Afghanistan. They then promoted the decentralization of power for each SSR to manage themselves, and US told French to screw off with their Vietnam problem and built a brotherhood pact with the rest of America, thus both of them avoided a shit ton of mistakes. Also Germany has a bigger military industry presence than French, which is the only historical change here that seems unbelievable to me. Terraforming and colonizing the stars needs a modular machine that can handle the rough terrain. Nations began to see its potential in the military, and thus the Anvil is born, highly mobile and modular humanoid war machine threatening to revolutionize the battlefield. But despite everything, all is still peaceful. Until Y2K happened, it got a lot more serious than just number going haywire. And that is the setting for Project Metallurgent, Generation 0. Yes, much like BattleTech, Project Metallurgent is intended to have multiple different eras for the players to participate in, though right now, it's still in development phase. Only Gen 0 is available, and a lot of things are still in the work. But anyway, let's talk about what's available right now. To play Metallurgent, you need a lot of D6, a GM or coordinator, and 4 players. Do not play the game with 6 players. The primary dice mechanic that governs over everything is this: when you roll a dice, 1 2 3, you get nothing, 4 5, you get 1 success, 6, you get 2, add up those success, and if it gets over the target number, you hit it. However, there are things that can affect the base success criteria, which is 4+, like shooting weapon outside of optimal range, using scatter payload, or affected by the weather. Each character also has metal, basically your base dice pool. Everyone has 6 metal, so everyone has 6d6, and again, many things can affect the amount. And now that you have grasped the basic, let's talk about making your own anvil. But first, I want to make something clear: if you want BattleTech but streamlined, you are looking at the wrong place. If you want BattleTech but you are a sick mech freak with way too much knowledge on military equipment, you have come to the right place. I mean, just look at this upkeep rule. It's simpler than it looks, but also it's probably the easiest way to check if you will enjoy Metallurgent or not. The other thing is that, do you want to find out if your anvil can handle 4 pattern or T72 at once? And you most certainly can. With that out of the way, let's talk about the anvil. There's 6 components to an anvil. Before adding in weapons and equipments: the core, the mobility base, arms, both of them, generator, and electronic, plus FCS or fire control system, but it's kinda tied to electronic, so these makes almost no differences. The core is, well, the core, torso. The core primarily determines your defense, which is the target number required to hit you, and your block bonus, which determines how many hits you can block when you, well, block. This is a part of the BID system, which is one of my most favorite mechanic in this ttrpg. The BID is a defense mechanic where once your target has hit your target number with a weapon attack, you can either block, intercept, or dodge it, as long as you can spend the energy. As I mentioned just now, block bonus determines how many hits you can block, and by blocking, it means you can choose a component and let it takes the attack head on, as each component has different resistances against kinetic, chemical, and energy attack. This lets you pick the most optimal approach to handle the damage. There's also shield that can be specialized in one or more resistance type to take hit better, and you can also block hits for other character. Other than that, core also tends to have a lot of hard points than even the heaviest arms, so it will be the place for you to store most stuff in. Mobility base determines your cruise speed, which is your normal speed, flank speed, which adds over that but makes you both shoot worse and avoid hits better, initiative to see how fast you go in a round, load tolerance for how much you can carry, and dodge bonus to add bonus to DV when dodging, and the cost to do so. Dodge is another part of the BID system. Since you only activate BID after a hit has been determined, you can decide whether that's enough to dodge or not, and this is important because dodge straight up lets you avoid all the damage, which is very good for a light speedy anvil, but it does means that weapon that can be fire repeatedly is going to be bane for light anvil, as something will hit eventually. There's also maneuver cost, which is the charge cost, another resource you need to keep track of. To perform maneuver, this includes reaching flanking speed, kicking, ramming, or punching people, changing facing even outside of your turn. Yes, facing is important here. I mention BattleTech here a lot for a reason, as well as for performing some special maneuver and skill. There's also 6 types of chassis for mobility base. Biped is the generalist option that's average at everything. Reverse joint can go steady to shoot more accurately or jump around like a maniac. Quadruple can carry a lot and can fire without stopping. Tracked can carry even more and can actually turn their waist and being much tougher. Wheel is fast on flat ground and can drift attack people. And finally, hover is stupidly fast over almost any terrain, can maintain facing in any direction while moving, but is also kind of fragile, and might slide around more often than you want to. Picking a mobility base probably affects what kind of anvil you are going for the most, as each chassis has vastly different capability than one another. Load tolerance is also very important, as it doesn't just determines how much you can carry, there's also breakpoints between different levels of load that also determines how fast and how high your anvil's initiative will be, so taking more weapons and equipments might not necessarily be a good idea. Next is arms, and there's 2 kind, standard arms with hand to grab stuff and punch people with, and weapon arms that are basically just a gun, but also tends to be better than wieldable primary weapons in some way. This includes a big rotary cannon, artillery missile launcher, laser cannon, howitzer, dual auto cannon, painful scatter laser, micro missile launcher, mining drill, and a gigantic fuck-off huge railgun. I won't miss. Also, unlike its primary inspiration, you can perfectly give your mech a weapon arm and standard arm for that funky western mech look. There's 3 stats you need to take notice of. Agility add dices to any attack done within range 3, strength adds more damage to kinetic melee weapon as well as how much the arm can carry, and of course, hard points for how much physical space it has to carry stuff with. The agility stat right here gives the pilot a very good reason to put some kind of weapons on arms with good agility for that close quarter scenario. It also lets you shoot to the side so flanking unit will have to take more risk to do so. An anvil can be really powerful at close range even when not being made for melee, keep that in mind. Next is generator, the beating heart of an anvil. The first thing you need to take notice is the energy output and energy capacity. The first determines how much energy the anvil can generate per round, the second determines how much energy it can store. The amount produced looks high, but all of your component and some equipment drain energy passively, vastly reducing the output. The amount left is then used to activate everything, like firing weapon or equipment, as well as any BID action. This gives a new layer to the gameplay. A player have to decide how much energy they want to spend on weapons or equipment, and how much to leave for BID for defense. Too much on offense and you might get crushed, too much on defense and you will be doing nothing. It also prevents a player from getting ganked in the first round for having low initiative, as they would have full energy bar for any BID actions they want. This also lets you shoot out more guns on the first turn to overwhelm the enemy, if you are using a generator with high energy capacity. However, energy cost isn't the only thing preventing you from performing more action, if you are sane, because most weapons and equipment also has a heat cost, and generator has a limited heat capacity to take in heat, and things will not be nice if you exceed it. To find out how much the generator can cool, you have to check its cooling type, and there's 3, gas, liquid, and plasma. Gas cooled is really good when the weather is cool and not when the weather is hot. Liquid cooled reduces accumulated heat in half no matter the amount, and plasma just reduces all heat to 0, which is very good, but each cooling type reacts differently when overheating, with gas doing the least harm and God helps you if you overheat a plasma cooled generator. But basically, gas is forgivable, liquid is reliable, and plasma demands attention. There's also one last thing to look out for with generator. Charge capacity is how much charge it holds, which in terms, determines how many maneuver you can perform. This thereby determines how fast you can move even more as well as performing weaponless melee, but charge capacity do not regenerate like energy, you have to spend fuel to charge it back up and there's only so much fuel, so saving it might be a good consideration. And lastly, electronic, which governs your anvil's intercept bonus. Intercept is the last component of the BID action that directly reduces the damage of the incoming hit, good for anvil that can't dodge well, and can also be further upgraded with CIWS system to also intercept hits for allies, very useful against artillery, and ADS system to massively increase intercept bonus for one attack against a big attack. There's also 2 more things, camera modifier to further increase or decrease the optimal range provided by the FCS, and refresh cost for how much energy it takes to purge error from the system. You are basically spamming F5 for your anvil's computer system. And speaking of the FCS, this is an important piece of the anvil that determines your weapon range and targeting mode. There's 2 range, minimum range, and optimum range. Optimum range is how far the FCS can detect target and let you shoot them normally, but sometimes, you might get jammed. This significantly reduces your viable range to minimum range. The camera modifier from electronic only affects the optimum range, by the way. Much like how FCS in Armored Core determines the most effective range band for your mech, you can equip FCS that fits your anvil's range band the most, whether that's FCS with long optimal range for long-ranged attack, or FCS with long minimum range to make jamming ineffective against you, or both at the cost of very high energy drain. It's a lot of factors to consider. There's also the targeting type, and there's 6 of them again. Optical gives no bonus, they are either really cheap or have extreme stat. Infrared lets you see through smoke, weather, and nighttime better. Wax lets you know if aircraft is coming and you can shoot them better. Laser can give laser guidance to laser-guided weapon for more accuracy. Tracking can give radar tracking to semi-guided weapon for more accuracy. And spotting lets you see hidden enemy or mines or bombs within minimum range, as well as shooting through solid cover better, which in Metallurgent, doesn't make hit harder to be achieved, but reduces incoming damage instead, but they also are easily shattered, so don't rely on them too much. If you want more targeting type than just what is provided by your FCS, you can in fact add in extra radars or visual module or laser designator for that. Say you have an infrared FCS but you want your missiles to be more accurate, you can either have an ally with tracking FCS, or shove in a tracking radar into your anvil. This do not improve your optimum range, but they usually have range far beyond than what FCS could provide, so they can be a nice addition. And that is the 6 base component you need to make an anvil. I think you can already start to see the insane potential of this customization system, but of course, an anvil will be nothing without its weapons and equipments, unless you are one of those people that are completely insane. So let's talk about them. Weapon comes in 3 types: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Generally, primary doesn't weigh much and has decent ammo count. Secondary is powerful but heavy and has less ammo, while tertiary is very lightweight, has even less ammo, and you only duct tape them on when you still somehow got free spaces left or need extra function, and your anvil can equip 2 of each, so that can be a lot of weapons to carry, if you want to overload your anvil. There's a lot of weapon variety in Metallurgent that you can usually expect in an Armored Core series, like assault rifle, sniper cannon, shotgun, laser cannon, mine launcher, laser blade, so many goddamn missile launchers and artillery, and 3 different pile bunkers, with a lot of overlap between the different classes, so you can always find something in a similar role. Both the weapon range and mechanic as well as FCS's optimum range kinda solved an issue present in Battletech, which is that all weapons have weirdly short range. Over here, a lot of weapon tends to have range vastly beyond what FCS can support, but you can still fire them with slight inaccuracy, and a lot of these weapons are clearly designed for off-board artillery support and high-altitude anti-air action, though that hasn't been developed yet. Most weapon also has more than one payload type, which is their ammo, which could have different capability, like firing flare or smoke shell out of a mortar instead of explosive, or switching the assault rifle from firing armor-piercing round to heat round. Most are locked to one ammo type once you deploy, but some can switch options in battle, giving you more tactical flexibility to handle the situation. For equipment, there's a lot of utility in lightweight and heavy package, like the various additional radar and sensor I have already mentioned that can be energized to push through enemy jamming, jammers and area jammers to worsen enemies' effective range, handheld shield, CIWS, chaff, and more for more protection, and basic things like extra ammo storage, auxiliary power unit, radiator, fuel tank, and more. There's also the local control array or LCA, which is one of the more unique equipment available to the players. Think of it as a deck of cards a commander anvil can use to order its allies for benefits, or to use against enemies to disrupt them. The LCA could take in a number of chipsets, each let you give out one specific order, and once you use it, you can't use it again for that sortie. That sounds very limited, but the LCA has another 6 basic actions known as standby chipsets that do not count towards the chipset slot limit and can be used for as many times as you want to, and if you don't want this much options and just want to call for reinforcement or support, you can just grab the radio that barely weighs anything. It's a really unique tool that needs some figuring out to use for sure. All these combined just lets the players create such an insane variety of anvil, and the book already suggested 6 core roles for players to try to build their anvils towards 4, like Vanguard for frontline engagement, Sniper for sniping stuff, Recon to use their sensor to detect enemies for allies, Defender to use their bulk for defense, Artillery to bomb the hell out of the enemy, and Captain to hand out orders through LCA to change the course of the battlefield. But of course, it's perfectly fine for you to ignore this and make whatever you want. Also, if you think building an anvil with all these rules on your own sounds very complicated, the dev team thinks so too, as they made an anvil builder for it in Google Sheet. Not gonna lie, I have spent hours on this thing making stupid anvil builds. And now, there's one last thing for me to talk about, damage steps. When the AP of a component gets fully depleted, a unit doesn't lose that component immediately, as it has to go through the damage step, which is very similar to what structure or stress is in Lancer, just with more words. There's always 3 steps, damaged, degraded, and disabled, and the AP get filled back to full after going through a step until it reached disabled, then it's, well, disabled. Getting any component of your anvil fully disabled sucks, but at the very least, do not get your core disabled. What this means is that an anvil is actually stupidly tough. Even the lightest anvil will be much tougher than a MBT, which only has 2 components to get disabled. Lightly armored unit like IFV gets only 1, and anything non-anvil with legs usually have 3 or more. Their damage steps are a lot more meaner too. 1 component vehicles has an extremely high chance of dying in 1 damage step, and tank could get their turret tossed. Non-anvil units really don't have much luck. And on top of that, non-anvil unit could only take a limited number of total damage step, assuming they are somehow not dead. This also makes high damage weapon quite good at destroying things faster from blowing through their damage step faster, assuming the projectile didn't get intercepted or dodged. And burst fire weapon is very good against lightly armored unit because they usually only have 1 component to go through, so just keep firing until they blow up. This is a really nice way to simulate the critical hit system from Battletech in a more simplified way for sure. The non-anvil NPC is full of cool ideas too. You get the normal pre-2000 military vehicles like Patton, T-72, BMP, Humvee, but you also get things like the Zia, Roswell, these Chinese vehicles which are basically just anvil gun carrier, a unit type I really like that also appeared in Phantom Brigade because it makes so much sense logistically, and also the perfect blend of high-tech and the 80s such as the Laser Hind. The Patton Starship is also here too, a vehicle full of crazy idea that I really like a lot, but I can only play as it in Armored Warfare and I fucking hate that stupid ass game, and you can shoot it into pieces with your anvil and that's cool. And that's basically it on Project Metallurgent, an alternative year 2000 tactical mech wargame with extensive mech building rule, and also a ttrpg, though that part is still very much in development aside from the combat skill. Anyway, you can currently download the beta copy on Metallurgent main website for free. The game is still in development, so it would be very helpful if you can beta test this game out for the dev team, and when the full version is out, I will link it down there too. There's also scenario pack coming in soon, so check that out when they comes out. Now, I'm gonna go crazy making more anvil again. That's all for now, and I will see you all next time. Hello there, if you like this video, please subscribe and click that notification bell button. If you want to see the videos early as well as further support my channel, you can join in my Patreon page, or buy me some coffee, links in the description. Anyway, have a nice day.